Oprah Winfrey and others who play the race card can't back up their statements with any facts.
Race baiters always say that conservatives speak in code, but how is it a code if you know what they're saying is race baiting? Race baiters, the race baiters become embarrassing.
This would be funny if it were not so telling about our society, in particular the knee-jerk instinct by so many to race bait.
Race hustlers and the grievance industry have intimidated the so-called conversation, turning any valid criticism of African-American culture into charges of racial bias.
Race baiting and race hustler are actually pretty ingenious terms. Similar to the phrase playing the race card. They've been reverse engineered, so it seems now only to apply to people of color talking about race and racism. I bring this up because Bill O'Reilly on his show last night called a sitting member of Congress a race hustler. The context was an interview with Congressman Paul Ryan, who said 2 weeks ago, "We have got this tailspin of culture in our inner cities in particular, of men not working and just generations of men not even thinking about working. There's a real cultural problem here that has to be dealt with." Congresswoman Barbara Lee responded to that by saying, quote, "Ryan's comments about inner city poverty are a thinly veiled racial attack. When Mr. Ryan says inner city, when he says culture, these are simply code words for what he really means, black." Lee also said Ryan should step up and offer some serious proposals to tackle poverty and racial discrimination. O'Reilly had Ryan on to talk about his exchange with Lee in a private phone call between the two members of Congress. And then, when Paul Ryan refused to kind of come out swinging and attack Barbara Lee on the air, O'Reilly said this.
They don't want to solve the problem. These race hustlers make a big living, and they get voted into office by portraying their constituents as victims. And it's all your fault, and it's my fault. It's the rich people's fault. It's the Republicans' fault. It's everybody's fault except what's going on. And what's going on, as you know, is a dissolution of the family, and you don't have proper supervision of children, and they grow up with no skills, and they can't read and speak, and they have tattoos on their neck, and they can't compete in a marketplace. And that's what's going on. But if you say that, you're a racist. So no matter what you say, Congressman, you're going to be branded because the race hustlers don't want to solve the problem. How's that?
Near as I can tell, what Bill O'Reilly means by the term race hustler is someone who tells their audience that the problems of poverty, particularly black poverty, have nothing to do with what they, the audience, are doing. That they, the audience, listening to the race hustler, are completely relieved of any obligation to change behavior, to do anything different in their lives to make poverty better. They bear no responsibility for it. In other words, the race hustler tells the audience, you are off the hook. But of course, that is precisely what Bill O'Reilly does. He tells his audience that the problems of black poverty is due to black culture, problems that are born in this country out of institutional racism and long-standing. When he tells them it's the dissolution of the family to blame, for example, the fact that before the recession, non-Hispanic white families were about 4 times as wealthy as non-white families. By 2010, whites were about 6 times as wealthy. Or I suppose it's neck tattoos that lie behind the fact that black unemployment rate is consistently twice that of whites. But none of it, according to Bill O'Reilly, none of it has anything to do with institutional racism or government policy or budgets or even just the laws passed by the people his audience shows up to vote for. If you are in Bill O'Reilly's audience, you can count on him to tell you time and time again that the racial disparities in America are not your fault. And so I would submit that by his very own definition, Bill O'Reilly is a pretty accomplished race baiter himself.